Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all this evening? I hope that everybody, wherever you are in the world, is feeling a little bit happy, or maybe a lot happy, I hope, in any case, and that you are feeling love in life, because that's something really that all of us yearn for, each and every one of us. Everything that's been created, every plant, every living being really, is something that desires to have that love in our life. And yet, at these times, sometimes we forget that actually it is that keeps that heart of ours beating, that keeps us motivated and inspired to do those things that really mean something to us. We can spend really a lifetime doing things that don't give us pleasure or joy, or that excited feeling that we have a reason to be on this planet. And I speak for myself, firstly. That is something that I try to achieve in every part of my life, albeit not so easily, I have to say. But find your reason for being on this planet. That's one of the most important things. And once we find our reason, everything else in our life opens up and becomes clear. Now, tonight, here in the United Kingdom, I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest, who is the very, very lovely Suzanne Morgan. Suzanne is an expert in structural, classical, biodynamic, and cranial osteopathy. Her varied and interesting life has led her to experience varied paths and soul-searching journeys along the way. Suzanne first studied engineering and then found herself on a biophysics degree. She then travelled around the globe, whilst working as a ski instructor, a walking guide, and a counsellor in between all those moments. One day, she had her moment of epiphany and knew that osteopathy was calling her name. Osteopathy for her seemed the ideal intertwining for everything that she had done previously. Her engineering, simple mechanics, love of science, biophysics degree, social work, counselling, and spiritual appreciation of who we all are suddenly came together as one. Not forgetting that she rather likes people and wants to take away their pain. How lovely is that? Suzanne works structurally, cranially, and biodynamically, always feeling how a patient's body responds and changes with treatment as they journey towards better health. And she has quite a fascinating life story, I have to tell you. And today she shares it with us. Welcome, dear Suzanne.
Hello, Mimi.
Hello, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction.
For a wonderful lady. Take a little bow now.
I'm bowing. I'm bowing.
How are you?
I'm well. I've had a busy day today. I've got some guests staying with me, and we've been showing them around our lovely neck of the woods, and trying to get the banking done, which is never easy nowadays. It's very hard to get your bank to transfer money. If it's a lot of it, they need your passport, they need your mother, they need your driving license, yes. They need a sworn affidavit. Goodness me, back and forth.
I know, it's not easy, is it? I never thought, that we would be able to walk into a bank with a mask on and ask for money and tell them to hand over the cash. I never thought that that day would arrive, but now it seems that's quite the norm.
No, they're quite cross. They hand them out at the door.
Oh,
You've got to
really?
mask up. I'm coming in here with your face showing.
It's okay to show that Kalashnikov, but that's, that's about as far as it goes. Well, it's so lovely. I am absolutely delighted, Suzanne, to have you here on the show. And it's a delight, really. And I'm really, really looking forward, and especially I have to say to the listeners that this lady is a fantastic osteopath. But not only that, she is a superb healer. And I'm honoured to have you here.
Thank you very much, Mimi. And I've been listening to these podcasts. You do a fantastic thing here. This has been wonderful that you're putting these out. And I've had some great listens. It's wonderful to have all these people sharing their life and their interests and stuff. It's really fascinating work. So well done, you, Mimi. This is brilliant.
Thank you,
Good
Suzanne.
work in the world.
Oh, well, I have to say it's all down to the guests, because if I didn't have the guests, then I wouldn't really have anything to do. But thank you anyway. That's very kind of you, I have to say. Now, tell us, you have such a varied life and you've done so many different things. And I know that, primarily you're an osteopath, but that is not all that you do. And there's so many different facets to your skills. But if we go back a bit, and we always do this, tell us a little bit about how this journey of yours of being a therapist, a healer, how did that all begin in life?
The origin story.
Yes.
Do you know what? I wish I had a really, really marvelously dramatic story to tell you. But it's probably quite similar to a lot of us. So maybe that parallel of journey of how you kind of almost seemingly bumble from one thing to another until you finally get somewhere and you look back on it and you go, wow, that actually now makes sense. It all seems really connected now from this perspective. But with the osteopathy, I got to a point in one of my jobs. At one point I was a social worker and I worked in residential social work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite stressful work. I was good at it. I enjoyed working with people and I could hold a space where they could feel safe. And there was lots of challenging behaviour and aggression going on that needed help, that needed a safe space held for. But it was also quite a stressful job.
Yeah.
And I'd started to develop a bit of a kind of a meditation practice and qigong. I'd worked quite hard on trying to de-stress after this and try to balance myself so that I was full up again by the time I came back into my job. Mm-hmm. And I found myself driving to work one day and having this little kind of dialogue going on in my head. You know how we've got our observer. So we've got our observer mind in our head. And then maybe we've got like a little table where many other little voices sit around and they discuss,
Yeah.
Please tell me other people have this. It's not just me.
I'm sure they do.
The many voices.
The delegation of the United Nations, yes.
Yeah, one of them's normally my mother's voice. and the other voice. And they were kind of negotiating how they could get out and go to work that day. because it had been quite stressful. There'd been a lot of needed work. There'd probably been some attacks or something like that. I can't quite remember, but it was quite a stressful period of this particular job. And they started to negotiate how we could have a very minor car crash. And they started eyeing up, that tree at a certain speed. Just not too fast, just enough for a bit of a fender bumper, but then I wouldn't have to go in, and I wouldn't maybe have to go in that day, and maybe if I did it well enough, I might not have to go in that week. And my observer started to pay more attention to this and was like, okay, this is a clear signal. You need to stop this job. You need to start planning your way out. You need to kind of maybe ring in sick that day. I can't remember whether I did or didn't. I just remember this kind of very little window back in time of this moment of realizing I can't be doing this forever. And then, well, what else? What else was I going to do? So up until that point, I had studied engineering, and I had a really good background with my dad. He was a mechanic and an engineer, so I was quite used to being underneath the hood of cars, helping him do up insurance write-offs when we were younger, which isn't a good thing now, but back then in the day it was, a little bit more acceptable. And also I had all this science engineering behind me, and I've ended up in social work, hating my job, good at it, but hated my job. So I quit and I went traveling around the world. And during that time, I was able to really start to get in touch with my spiritual side, really discover who I was without the clutter of life around me, to be able to really develop an ability to listen, and at the same time kind of waiting for something to drop out of the sky into my head as my next thing that I should do.
And why did you decide to go around the world? What was the initial inspiration for that?
Oh, because I could.
Because you could. Just simply because you could, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there were, why wouldn't anyone if you got a chance? So...
Because some people do it, they go to India and they do this whole pilgrimage to find themselves. Was it a little bit like that?
Yes. I think I do remember at the time saying it'd be nice to find out who I am. Not Suzanne the daughter, not Suzanne the social worker, not Suzanne all of these other hats that I wear, but actually whoever I want to be, because you can like reinvent yourself when you go into different new towns, new countries. You can play around with who you're going to be and discover different sides of you. I think that's more my playfulness coming out, actually, or my wannabe actress coming out. Give me a good hat and a coat, and I will embody that person.
And what was that? What was that program, Suzanne? And tonight, Jeremy. Was it Jeremy even?
I don't know, but I know what you mean. I'm going to be Cher.
Yes. So did you go as Cher?
Where's my wig?
Oh dear. So you ended up on a round the world trip, and that was for how long? A year?
Yeah, that was for years. So the standard, pull it out of the bag, ticket round the world, you pay your monies, you leave this airport, and 12 months later, if you don't get back through the airport terminal, you turn into a pumpkin or something, but the ticket runs out and you have to pay an extraordinary amount of money to get back. So, and you get this ability to tick off the countries. You can go, hi, or low. So you can kind of go through, you've got to somehow make this journey. You can only go one way round. You can't go back on yourself. And you get a certain amount of stops, and you've got to kind of make it back to England within 12 months. It's like a game.
Okay. Because I know a friend of mine did that, and she had to follow the route. You can't go off route. It has to be where it says on the ticket.
Oh, no, I wouldn't have liked that.
No, that would make me nervous. So, like, I think, say she was going to Panama, but ended up, I don't know, in Timbuktu. She couldn't do that. But I'd want something that I was able to do. Something quite as mad as that.
Yeah, no, this had a certain flexibility. So you could, as long as it was travelling in the same direction, and I think there were probably a limit on the long haul flights. So you could maybe say easily go from Australia to New Zealand, not a problem.
Okay.
But you couldn't kind of go backwards across the ocean, to like, oops, I forgot Europe, and then head back there to do Europe, and then back off to the USA again.
Okay. So there was some sort of an itinerary going on in the background.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you go alone, or did you go with other people?
No, I started off with my housemate, so an old school friend of mine. We were living together when I had the social work job. She did something else, and we were sharing the house, and we both planned. We both put our heads together and figured out how much the money would be, and planned and put our savings away. And if it wasn't for her, I'd have never really have gone, because she was so fantastically organised. She would just tell me what it is I need to do, where I need to be, and I'd be, yeah, right. But then once we kind of got travelling halfway around the world, we decided that it was good time to do a bit of travelling on our own, because when you're part of a couple, you can sometimes be a bit difficult to break into for other people around. Even though I'm very open and I'm very welcoming and I'm fascinated by people, I'm a real nosy person. So I come to me. I will always love to have a chat in the youth hostels, etc. But it's easier if you're not part of a couple sometimes. You're even more approachable, and you take more risks. And that's where. So we decided, round about Australia, I think we started going on our own. So halfway round. So I did half the world, holding hands with my mate, and then the other half on my own.
That was very brave of you.
Yes. Or well,
I'll let you finish that sentence.
To be brave, you have to have a good handle on the. You have to fear stuff in order to be brave, because you have to overcome it. And I think back then I was fairly fearless, because I just had this real strong intuitive sense that life is just going to guide me. It's going to pick me up and place me in front of the people that I need to be in front of, and take me down the path that I need to go. And it did. I had some real good adventures, and by being that open, I think, what's that thing about saying yes to everything?
Yes.
Experiment. Do it for a day. Do it for a day with the 7-year-old.
You won't be doing that again.
Yeah, no. Cost a lot.
And how does it, because when people travel a lot, they have a completely different perspective of life, and it is completely different. It somehow the soul opens in such a astounding way. How do you then get back to England and lead a, let's say, different life to being so free? How did you manage to do that transition?
It's difficult. It was quite difficult. I kept coming back and then I would run away again. I would be, this is fast, this is frantic, and what I'm seeing around me doesn't necessarily reflect the pace of my soul and the views in my heart. So I think that I not say I love this country and it's my home. So, but in comparison to a lot of other countries, especially in the South, it's very fast. It's very fast. It's very busy. It's about doing the stuff, and it's doing the stuff great, but that's exhausting. So I think I came back at one point and tried a job and refused to have a car, and I lived out in the countryside. And to help slow everything down, I walked everywhere. So I would walk into my job. That would be about 5 miles from the countryside into this job. I'd get up really early and walk all the way into this job. I was doing working for the police, and I was opening their mail for the speed cameras. So I get to read everyone's excuses for why they went through.
Do you know
speed camera.
Excuses? That's always handy to know.
Sneezing. I sneezed. I was in the middle of a sneezing fit. No, actually, the truth, I don't think any of them pulled muster. Maybe your wife's pregnant and you're rushing her to hospital.
Yes, that's not a bad one.
Yeah.
So you came back and you tried that job, and then what happened?
And then I went off and I found another job working in Italy. So working in Italy as a walking guide. And then
that's rather lovely.
Working in Andorra as a skiing guide, and then working in Norway as a walking guide and a skiing guide. I managed to avoid coming home for a while, for a long time. But during this time, I had osteopathy in the back of my head. I knew about osteopathy by then. And I had a friend who had been treated by a cranial osteopath for vertigo. And that's how I came across it. And I had gone with this friend because vertigo can be really, can make you quite agoraphobic. You know, when you can't trust the ground, you don't want to leave the house. You want to stay inside. And so I would go with her to various different healers and Chinese medicine and to the NHS, ear, nose and mouth specialists. And it was the osteopath that started to make a change for her. And I remember my heart just jumped. It glowed with just, you know, when you fall in love and you get that run through your heart. And that to me has always been, when that happens, you know that thing's for you. You know, that's a very clear indication in my mind that you found a thing there, and that thing is something that is going to fit into your thing-shaped hole in your life, and the universe has kind of brought you along. That's one of the things you should be doing. But back then, to train as an osteopath, it was a lot of money.
I've heard that it runs into the thousands, doesn't it?
I think it would. There was no help from the government. It wasn't recognised as something that they would give grants to. There was all self-funding. So I was looking at probably a good £30,000, which certainly I didn't have, and no one I knew seemed to have it to give to me. So you kind of just like go, oh well, that amazing feeling. Maybe, yes. maybe another life. Maybe it was in another life I get to be an osteopath, and you pack it away.
Yeah.
But I've since then gone away and done lots of moving around, working in Norway, and my dad sadly died. Very close to him, and he had a really big heart attack, and sadly we lost him. He'd have not been aware of much himself, but we were all devastated, and I came home and started to kind of help my mum with my younger brother and sister, and had this kind of period of space and mourning and time to reflect. And in that period, I started looking up osteopathy again and realised that it was now funded. I could get a loan for it, and they had only just started. So it's like that calling back to me to England by coincidence or just poetry or whatever. It was round about the same time that we started to get funding for osteopathy. So that was it. That was like, yeah.
And how long did that? That's an amazing, I don't believe in coincidences, Suzanne, I have to say to you. I think there's all this synchronicity going on in our life, and everything around us has this plan, a greater plan that we are totally unaware of. But like you said, I love what you said. It's like, that feeling when something is right for you. You cannot put that into words. It's suddenly like all the stars have aligned and it's there to lead you to your path. I find those moments remarkable. And with your osteopathy, how long was that course for?
I did excuse me. I did a kind of an access course into it. And so with the access course and the osteopathy, that was 5 years. 5 years in total. And then they say you have another 10 years where you need to be working with the body for about 10 years. So it's about 5 years post graduation that you start to really, really feel the tissues and start to palpate. We use the word palpation, which is to feel what's underneath and how the body moves and how the body responds. So you've got 5 years of college and then probably another 5 years of working in the field to really develop those osteopathic kind of senses.
Now, for people out there that have heard of osteopathy, but there are so many out there, people, Suzanne, that actually don't know what it actually means and what it entails. So for everybody out there who doesn't know, explain to us sort of in a paragraph, what is osteopathy? I know, because I'm going to my osteopath and people say, what's that? Is that a physio? Well, no, it's not. It's an osteopath. What do they do? I don't know.
I have yet to work out the elevator pitch, Tora. Mimi, it's so complex in some ways.
I know, but in a paragraph, imagine I'm 5 and you're explaining it.
Well, I think my people come to me because they're either in pain or they've been treated by an osteopath before and they want to stay in as much health as they possibly can.
Mhm.
I see my job as finding people's health and trying to hold a space for that, to expand into the patients to the fullest amount that it possibly can. But that's not helpful if you're fine and you want to understand. So from a structural point of view, I'm often kind of, from a pain patient point of view, I'm looking for the bits that don't move well, that aren't doing what they should do, and I'm wiggling them very cleverly. But really what I'm doing is I'm getting them to wiggle and I'm getting them to move, and I'm getting the blood to flow in and for drainage to start happening, and the underlying processes of the body, the physiological processes, to start to come in and start to work a bit better, to start to perform, to start to be healthier. The byproduct of that, which is really desirable, is that lots of patients stop feeling as much pain and they start to function better. They start to be able to go about their life a little easier. I'll often talk about, the tissues. Beef jerky, we've kind of got this fillet steak states that we can be in when we're 70, and when we're a bit older, some things get a bit beef jerky, and then we're everything in between.
What's beef jerky?
Beef jerky. It's do you not know what beef jerky is?
No.
Oh, you've missed. How you've missed out. It's like dried. It's a food. They get beef and they dry it, and it's kind of tough, and it lacks, because they've dried it. It lacks fluid, and it lacks bounciness. So it's kind of basically that fillet steak dried. So I'm not saying that my patients are like that. I don't want to reverse out of this.
Just stop digging now.
Yeah, I know. Reverse dig. It's an analogy I use a lot when I'm speaking to my patients, because they can feel it themselves. When I'm rubbing that bit between their shoulder blades, and they go, oh, that's the bit that hurts, and I rub my fingers over it, and it goes, and that's kind of, the tissue is just a little bit, we call it fibrotic, but it's a bit beef jerky. and if we start to free that tissue up, it goes more fillet steak.
Supple.
Yeah. So supple, but it's
why do people eat beef jerky?
Do you know what? I reckon it must go back to when you've slain a giant mammoth, and all you can really do is have a mouthful, and you're left with the mammoth. And what are you going to do with that now? You cut it up into little strips and you dry it out. And now you've got mammoth jerky. And that will store for longer than the mammoth steaks. So I think that's down to it. I think if you had a choice, you'd go with the normal steak, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, supple is, I think, the name of the game. I think that's where we want to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now,
I'd like to apologise to all my osteopathic colleagues right now. I'm
going to look up beef jerky.
Not the best job of explaining osteopathy, I'm afraid.
We get the gist. The gist.
Hang on, Mimi. I've got it in a notebook in front of me. I prepared quite well here.
Okay.
let me flick through to what I actually wrote that I was going to say. Here we go. It's looking for health. It's the kind of intersection between the toxic load, the blood flow, the drainage of tissues, the general disease and trauma that's come before, what environment and job we've had. We're looking at posture, the asymmetry. We might look at patient vitality. We might look at patients' beliefs, openness, their interconnectedness, their interoception, their sense of their own felt body, what their health is, what their ancestors' health is, what grandma's health was like, and all of this comes together to make up the patient and their health. And we take all of that into consideration, and then we put our hands on them and we feel what's underneath our hands, and we might go, oh, that's a bit beef jerky there. and that bit's a bit stuck, and we might move them to try to improve that situation. Or we might work cranially, where it feels like we're not doing actually any moving of the tissues at all, but we're working quite deeply within the patient's system, working with the cerebrospinal fluids and the waves that kind of go on in the body. We kind of feel those. We've got kind of a pulse that runs through the body with our blood, and we've got a pulse that runs through our body with our breathing and our thorax. But we've got other pulses that run through the body, some of them through cerebrospinal fluid that encases the brain and the spinal cord, and also from maybe the movement through the cells, maybe the electronic magnetic fields running through the body, maybe from without. But we feel this movement, and we know it's connected to a patient's vitality, and we know that improving that or giving it space to do its thing and hold it improves the patient's health. Now, that's how was that one?
That was actually better? Rather fantastic, I have to say.
Fabulous. See what happens when I look at my notes.
Yes, well done. But in all honesty and in all seriousness, I'm glad you mentioned the beef jerky, because sometimes it's difficult for such a therapy, which it is a therapy. It's a whole system. It's a holistic therapy that encompasses the whole human being. But I'm glad that you mentioned, joking aside, the beef jerky, because it's something that people can associate with. It's difficult sometimes to understand. I've got a pain in my back. Oh, it's because I lifted this, or I don't know what that is. And you need to get through, I think, the beef jerky stage in order to say it feels a bit dodgy, or, I don't know what it is. I can't move my arm or my leg, in order then for the healing process to open on many levels. And that's something that I know that you do, is that you work on so many different levels within the human being. And we've spoken about this, I know, many times, but is the spiritual connected, do you also work on that, Suzanne, as well as working fundamentally on the, what seems to be the physical, and you're putting things back and adjusting, all sorts of things, muscular and neurological, but there must be a spiritual element to it, surely.
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't think of myself as working on a patient's spiritual or soul side. That isn't what my intention and my objection is when I'm treating osteopathically. But when I am looking at a patient's health and I'm evaluating maybe their prognosis, how much vitality, how much ability does this patient have to help themselves, and how they go about helping themselves. There is a crossover that I think is a conversation that maybe does need to happen within conventional medicine, and within maybe what we do with osteopathy. Certainly our soul and our spirit affects our health, even if we are atheists. If we have no belief and our kind of church's science and fact and rationality, that in itself is part of your soul. That is your expression of that. So in essence, no, I'm not treating, but I do know that it seems to have a very big part in patients' health, healing, and what we work with sometimes within the cranial field. We're often talking about the patient's inner physician. So when you feel these rhythms, you end up kind of really questioning, well, I know I don't have an explanation in science for this. I know I felt that. I know the patient felt that. I know the patient's going to get better. I know my colleagues who treat this way feel that. What is it? It's we can speculate as to what that is, and we often talk about this inner physician, this drive that the body has towards being well, towards being healthy, and I just think it's fascinating. I think it's a really good conversation to have. And health, medicine, and spirituality, they should be quite comfortable bed partners.
It's true, and it doesn't matter what your belief system is on any sphere, really. But what does matter is that we believe in ourselves, and we know how we feel. We are the best doctors for our own body. Only we can know how we feel. But your work, Suzanne, I think enables people to have a closer proximity to their soul and to their physical being, because I don't think one can function without the other unless they're in some sort of harmony.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of, if we look at whole health, what goes up to make health in an individual, and we've got their physical health. That's part of what it is to be healthy. We might look at someone's mental health, their quality of life, their life philosophy, and then within that their spiritual health. And if we take away, if spiritual health isn't there, even if that spiritual health is a belief in there being no spirit, but they're very happy and comfortable in that place, and that is their then we're missing a big part of the picture for helping them get better. And then we interact with that. Then we interact with this inner physician when we treat, and we've got to kind of wonder when we do some things. What is this inner physician, and what is this drive towards health that the body has that's in it. And
what do you think it is?
Well, I can.
In your opinion, of course.
Oh, well, I mean, like because I'm trying to chat to this like an osteopath, but from a wider point of view, it's just that whole wonderful connectedness that we are here on this planet. We're all connected. Everything. It is of no surprise to me at all that we have something running in us and through us that wants to bring us towards health, and us generally plodding around in the world. It wants to bring us towards a better life. Wants us to do what we find makes us happy. Wants us to live in this world in a good way. Yeah, I don't have. It's all sounding a little bit Pollyanna, but you know what I mean.
I love Pollyanna.
Yeah, she's a girl with a good attitude there.
I love Pollyanna.
So I'm no guru. I'm just a little starlight
but you are
myself,
an expert.
trooping through this world, trying to make sense of it. But I know what resonates with me, and you know, generally, there is this push towards us being in the right place and being content. When we're doing the right things, we're happy. You find the right job, you're happy, and the universe just obliges. It will send you the right things at the right time if you listen to it. And I think that's the same way with the health in the body. If you hold a space for it, and you take away the blocks, whether they're physical or not, and you also, for some reason in the body, it really likes you to know that you know it. So it's important that it has your attention. If you're the healer or the osteopath, it's your intention and your attention are quite important to it. So maybe outside in the bigger world, as we try to make the best fist of it as possible, our attention and our intention are really important. So, for instance, I fall asleep. I call it falling asleep. I think we all do it. So you're alive, you're on it, you're in tune with life, and suddenly you wake up 4 months later and you're like, what happened? I've just gone a little bit blindfold through 4 months of my life, and I was like really on it. I was wide awake, and I was creating my own magic. And then you fall asleep, and then you wake up 4 months later, 4 years later, and then you realize, okay, course correction. I've obviously started doing what the radio and the television and society is kind of scripted for me. And then you have a course correction and you go, all right, let's go live in the countryside. Or, let's go and live on an island somewhere and join a monastery. That seems to suddenly be what I'm being guided to do. And then maybe you fall asleep again. And I think maybe that's going on there when we're healing in the body sometimes. It wakes up when you pay attention to it.
Because there is a certain lull. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said to me, everyone seems to be in some form of a lull. And when you look around, there is this sort of, I don't know if it's a deep sleep, what it is. And then a friend of mine sent me a video from Spain, and they were doing flamenco dancing. And I thought, well, they're not in a lull. They're awake. They're living life.
Yeah.
So my question is, Suzanne, what is that spark that ignites that love, that passion for life, that awake type of state where you're awakened to yourself? Because I think if you're walking around in a lull, you're asleep to yourself. Because when you're dancing flamenco, for example, or you're watching the dancers of flamenco, it was fabulous actually, seeing her and seeing them dancing. It sort of made me smile and smile. And I thought, my goodness, there's still that out there in the world.
And I love the dresses, the lovely,
yes, aren't they amazing?
Petticoats flashing. Oh, what great movements. Yes.
Yes. So what is it that, I suppose, puts us to sleep to the point where we don't even hear the music in order to dance, this dance of life?
Oh, that's a good one. Have you noticed that we all kind of seem to fall asleep over the last couple of years?
Yeah.
The coronavirus. I'm having this conversation a lot with people where they're saying, so kind of observing as they try to work out, when was the last time I had Christmas with my mother, or when did I last go on holiday? And it seems like it even though it was 2 years plus ago, the 2 years seems to have kind of gone in a snap. And there's this sense of, it feels like it was last year, because last year that was the year before coronavirus struck. And so it seems a bit like, in people's perspective, sense that 2 years have just zipped by, even though probably during lockdown for some of us it really dragged. But so we all just quickly slept through that bit. Or maybe but what puts us to sleep?
And then what wakes us up, I mean, watching that video, I think was delighted. I was so excited to watch it.
I think it also probably goes with the individual. I think a lot of, the media and television and stuff that isn't natural to how we were designed. So, we go back to Paleolithic times. We're meant to be outside under big, bright, starry skies with the mud between our toes, under trees, listening to the birds, being with the animals. And we're in this world we've created that's very clever and very convenient and very productive. But I think it sends us asleep as far as that soul awakening is concerned. That bit of waking up and going, right, what was I doing again? Yes, I was journeying towards happiness, and I was making good decisions in my life, and I was deciding to follow my intuition. And then this kind of heavier environment around us sends us asleep again. And I think as to what wakes us up, I think when you haven't ever really done it before, it's normally a big kick up the bum.
Yes.
And then when you start to listen and you start to pay attention, it can be, a bit kinder, because you're already you're not completely asleep. You're a little bit easier to wake up, and you can see. I think I call it sometimes, it's like life's in the corner going, hello, oh, and they're having a little kind of wave at you, and they wink at you, and you go, oh, what was that? Yeah, oh gosh, yeah, crikey, I fell asleep again. What is
it's a dangerous thing, though. It's a dangerous thing, I think, to fall asleep. I feel that. I've always felt that you have to be alert. And there are times for being still, of course, and to let go. But I think we have to be awake and alert to our own state of being at all times, whether that be in this, meditation state, whether that be in walking, in talking. I think we have to have this self awareness consistently in order to keep ourselves awake. I remember one of my earliest memories is my grandparents had these weird friends, and they were so strange, and they were really asleep. And I remember, I don't know, I was about 4 or 5, sitting. They had this farm, and I was sitting on this fence. I remember looking at these people and thinking, I never want to be like that. They haven't got a clue about life. And it was because they were asleep, in effect. And that's why I think it's important never to sort of lose sight of that horizon of where you're going, that discipline, because then everyone then can do whatever they want with you. They can steer you in any direction, and your mind wanders, as opposed to us being completely alert in that moment.
I don't know, Mimi. I'm a little bit more compassionate to myself, in that I actually recognise I'm going to fall asleep. It's going to happen. I might not fall asleep for long, but it's a high vibration you're asking yourself to maintain, staying totally awake. And I think we come across these individuals that are meant to be fully awakened, and we have the awakening. We've got this Buddha was an awakened being, and Jesus was, and we have this apparently more and more awakenings are happening. But to actually maintain that awakeness, that's hard work if you're not actually vibrating at that level. So
it is hard work, but it becomes not hard work if you actually just become in that state of being without actually forcing it for it to become a way of life. In a way, I've spoken about this before, but it's one of my greatest lessons in life is when I went to the tomb of, the great Jalaluddin Rumi, the mystic
Yes.
and the poet.
Yeah.
And I remember visiting so many of these places, and, like yourself, you go on a journey, and it's a consistent journey through life, in fact. But I remember sitting at the tomb and in Konya in Turkey, and it's one of the most beautiful places. And I remember I had all these questions on this piece of paper, and I wanted to ask, to be inspired for the answers to my life. And every single answer that I felt in my heart was to love. And yes, but what about this? Just love. And what about this? Just love. And in the end, I got a bit frustrated because I thought, well, I know I'm one of these people who truly believe in that, that we are beings of love. But I didn't quite understand the message. And then when I came away from there, I had this moment, and I heard this voice in my heart, and it said, it is not enough to love or be loved. You must become love, but you are already love. So this state of being awake, it's a similar thing. You become that state. It's where you will resonate. It's where you will vibrate consistently. and then you never fall asleep.
What a wonderful place to vibrate in. To vibrate in love. That sounds lovely.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. I remember coming across some Buddhist meditations that I would try doing. I was doing, where you meditate on compassion. So I love compassion. I love compassion for myself and for others. That seems to really kind of strike a chord with my inner self, and to just try to hold yourself in that state of compassion. Yes. And then, unfortunately for me, I have to take the kids to school. And then I temporarily fall asleep. and then I come back. So I'm probably not. You may be further down the road. And at the moment,
I don't know what road. I don't know what road I'm down. But it's just, as long as we're traveling down the road and we're sort of moving in a direction
absolutely
that feels that you feel at peace with and you feel serene with, I think that's the best that we can do, is to have that serenity. That is what I'm doing. I always say to myself, is that going to be bringing you peace to your life? No, not really. Well, then stop it. And I have been strict with myself. And as you said, sometimes you can go off course and then you get a completely different direction. You get thrown in that direction because you weren't listening, you weren't looking. And I think the older we get, the tougher the lessons become.
And you know what? Sometimes maybe you needed that lesson and you don't understand it yet. You had to go and discover something about yourself and your patterns and maybe what your soul's been up to in previous lives. And you needed to move on a little bit from that. So you needed a bit of anesthetizing. So you fell asleep and fell down that particular ravine.
Yes. And sometimes, I believe that we're blindfolded at times when we're crossing that treacherous river, or, the treacherous ravines. You somehow, you are blindfolded to that moment so that you're able to cross. Because, life is treacherous at times, and it takes a lot of courage sometimes to even get up in the morning and put your clothes on and go and lead a life that day. It's a huge amount of courage at times.
I have this saying I love to use. It's not very positive, but it's not easy. It's not easy here on planet Earth. It's not easy. And well done, all of us.
Yes.
We're doing a cracking job. Big round of applause.
Yes, indeed.
We got up, we showed up, we're here. I'd say there's a lot of other souls that decided, nah, it's not for me. I'll sit this one out. You lot go.
Yeah.
So the fact that we
decided to come.
We came. We showed up. So well done.
I don't know what prize we're getting, but anyway, I think we're going to get something very worthwhile. The famous saying, whoever brought me here will have to take me home. And that's definitely the truth. But I wanted to ask you, Suzanne, you spoke about compassion.
Mm.
Do you think that, for example, with your work, and it's a very deep work, do you think that your life experiences and what you've been through in your life have given you the ability to be compassionate towards other people?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. Yes. I think I was a very sensitive child. So I don't think my childhood was any way remarkably unpleasant, but I was probably quite a wide open, sensitive heart, and kind of came out of childhood thinking, I just don't want anyone to feel pain.
Yeah.
Because of my own sensitivities, etc. And that has been a big motivator to just I think within social work it's like emotional pain and social pain, and then within osteopathy it's that physical pain and all the other stuff that comes with it. Compassion is key, and you've got to have compassion for people who you might think sometimes don't deserve it, or they've done wicked things, or you need to sometimes step back with compassion and try and see that wider picture. You don't excuse it, but you have to see sometimes with compassion in your heart. I don't like meanness, and I know there's that exists in life, etc. But as a rule around me, in my life, my friends, those that are around me, you can be all kinds of shapes of human being. As long as you're not mean, it's fine. It's a great journey. And then even for those that are, I have compassion. I have compassion there to try and understand what led to that.
You speak of being sensitive as a child.
Yes.
And did that carry on into your adult life? And how was that, dealing with that as, I suppose, are you an empath?
Yes.
Would you say?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so that's difficult sometimes to, I suppose, be in the world. How did you cope as a child and then into adulthood, having these great sensitivities?
I think I'm quite a comedian. So there's an awful lot of laughing things off if you can't laugh at yourself.
Right, yeah.
So, but I think my big wound when I was a child was a learning wound. So that was the big one that kind of seemed to run through a lot of it. And I'm quite severely dyslexic, and I never got the diagnosis until I was in my mid-30s, even though much earlier than that it had been talked about. But there was lots of kind of learning traumas going on when people were trying to understand why I couldn't perform as well as the other kids around me. And when I say people, I mean my mum and dad, God bless them. I think my dad was dyslexic as well, and he probably taught me how to read with the same impatience that the priests had probably taught him.
Right, okay.
And then the schooling system back in the 70s wasn't ideally set up at recognising or supporting. So I was sent off to, or they wanted to send me to a school for people with learning disabilities. And my parents fought hard and got tests done and said, look, she's quite bright. There's obviously kind of not that going on. So I was then the lazy and the stupid one. So or not the stupid one, the lazy one. So I think that kind of got in under my skin. That made me quite sad, that I'd got this label, and I still had this frustration of trying to kind of communicate or learn to read and write and spell. Oh, goodness me. Put a spelling test in front of me, I will go into fight and flight immediately.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, and that process through life. But even with that osteopathy, I was when I was studying biophysics, they sent me off to the psychology department there to say, clearly you are, so go to our great psychology department. They're running loads of tests, and they would be delighted to have some dyslexics to kind of work with and test. So I went along, and one of the things that came out is that I was a kinesthetic learner. So where mainly we have the 5 senses: smell, taste, sound and vision. So sound and vision are the main ways that most people will take in their information, and then they'll have a secondary one, a backup, maybe taste. That one's a bit weird. But kinesthesia, that's a much smaller group. There are lots of us out there, but it's a smaller group compared to vision. But that was my main one. And of course, kinesthesia I use every single day in every single way within osteopathy. That's exactly how I take in my information. It's just quite hard to spell using kinesthesia.
I'm surprised you can say it. I wouldn't be able to say it.
I feel that word looks I feel that word's spelt right. It just doesn't work as a learning approach. It's not good.
So then what happened? How did you cope with having this label attached to you? How did you overcome this, in effect, mountain?
Well, the label wasn't, the lazy label was attached to me. Dyslexia kind of wasn't. I was taken out, I was put into another school. I then got very good at art and drama and science and kind of anything that I could avoid doing writing for became quite kind of my thing. Science particularly. But then science also really, really fitted because I wanted to know the answer to anything. If you asked me when I was a kid, what would be your definition of heaven? My definition of heaven was to finally know the answer to everything. And I always say that quite ironically now, because now we've got Wikipedia. And so apparently I am now in heaven.
Are you?
It isn't anything like I imagined.
It never is, Suzanne. It never is. Oh dear.
So so the dyslexia kind of my dad, when dyslexia testing was spoken about at the upper school, he didn't want me to do it because he thought it'd make me lazy. I'd stop trying. And I think he was kind of seeing it through his eyes. I now know very, very different. My son's dyslexic, and he'll get absolutely every bit of help I can give him. And but he meant well. He was doing kind of what he thought was best. And how did I cope with it? I just got very good at other things. And if you're quite smart anyway, you adapt. So you become what they call quite adaptive. So if I had to read, I would read very slowly and very expressively. But if you asked me what I've just read, I wouldn't have a clue. I'd have forgotten it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I had to spell, what I used to do is I would write tiny, so tiny that you couldn't tell what vowels I was writing down, or even what adjectives were. If they had long tails like D's or, B's, that they would all look the same. They would be written in tiny. And I used to get these really, those pop-up pencils. So they're like pens, and you can get like 0.5 of a mil thickness. And I would write in these tiny little points the most minuscule writing with like these great big long tails. So, there was an indication that there was actually some letters going on in there.
Yeah, that was very clever of you.
And no one would know.
that actually was very clever of you.
That was an A or an I or an O or a U.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then spells. I mean, like, now we've got spell check. Wow, that's brilliant. And audiobooks and all this text to speak. Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful stuff. Just the world is so different now.
It is indeed. And do you feel like you belong more in the world now as an adult?
Oh, that would be supposing that I didn't feel like I belonged in the world. So, I think I always felt like I belonged here. But I think the world's got a nicer place for dyslexics. I had a discussion with the school today regarding my son, and the amount of stuff that he could have, and the support and the understanding and the amount that they were there ready to offer. He's even got this wonderful little stool, his fidget stool. So he can kind of, how you rock back on your chair at school?
Yeah.
You're bored, you're rocking back, someone kicks the leg out and you land on your coccyx, then you come and see an osteopath. But, so he kind of, he's quite kinesthetic himself. So you ask him a question, he has to do 5 bunny jumps and a star jump in order to answer the question. And so they've got these little wobble chairs for the kinesthetic kids. So they can safely wobble all the way through their lessons and kind of burn off that energy. Absolutely brilliant stuff.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I want one. I need one. I need a little wobble chair.
And what happens on this wobble chair? You wobble?
You wobble. It's just basically a, how you have the Swiss balls, the Swiss exercise balls?
Yeah.
So you could sit on a Swiss exercise ball and kind of roll around a little bit, but it's not that sturdy, and, you have to work quite hard with your core strength to keep on it. These wobble chairs have like a fifth of a kind of a ball on the bottom, and then they're just this tall, quite rigid stool with a nice soft bit to sit on at the top. So while you're sitting on them, they're like a cylinder, and you can kind of roll around one way and the other. You can't see it, but I'm doing it right now. And so you can rock back on it, rock forward on it. They are brilliant. I'll bring you one, Mimi.
Yes, this is so interesting.
I'll see if I can smuggle one out of the school and bring it to us.
Yes, this is so interesting. And what does that actually help with?
I think if you're some kids, we have to just be active. We have to get the pencil in our fingers, and we have to be flicking it and twirling it and twisting it. If I was doing a lecture, I'd have to get a bit of plasticine or blue tack and I would have the blue tack in my hands, like a little fidget thing. And I'd be making little square, circle, triangle, square, circle, triangle, maybe a little mouse, and I was be sculpting with this. So one part of my brain would be occupied in the fidget, and then that meant that the rest of my brain could clue into what was being talked to me about, and that seemed to make all the difference. Otherwise, the bit of my brain that wasn't being taken up by the fidget would be outside the window, walking around in the street, kind of wondering what that bus noise was, or who's that chatting, or what was that just went past.
Yes.
And so I think kind of when you're really young, that manifests a little bit, maybe like, doing bunny jumps and twirling and, staring off into space and, kind of, or running around, running around the living room 5 times before you come back to give the answer.
Well, I find it fascinating because I have some friends and they live in Germany, and they have a Rudolf Steiner school.
Oh, wonderful schools.
Yes. And this actually now reminds me of what you're saying, because their son also just could not get on in a mainstream school. So they did a lot of research and put him in a Steiner school, and he's absolutely excelled there.
Yeah.
So that's why it's fascinating for me.
I often talk about, we have a triangular shape, a school system that's set up for triangular shaped people. Could be round, could be, but let's just go with triangles. And then we've got some kids, a lot of kids that are triangular shaped. They fit nicely into the triangular shaped school system. But then we have circles and we have squares and little stars, and they're coming along and they're trying to fit themselves, they're jamming themselves through that triangular shaped school system, and they manage it because they're brilliant. But it didn't work out for them as well as the triangular shaped children. That makes sense. And
it makes sense, actually. I think that's what people are like. All shapes and sizes, as you said. And it can't be that everyone's the same, and not everything applies to everyone. And a lot of the anxiety that happens in life, I think, is that we compare ourselves, and well, that is a game that you never win at. But when we stop comparing and accept that we are either triangle or circle or star shape, like you said, we accept ourselves entirely. I think that's the point, that we've reached that sort of equilibrium within ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. When you don't care anymore. And I don't mean in a bad way, but like you just like totally so happy with who I am.
Yes.
I'm all right. I don't need to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish, you know what, Suzanne, I wish that more people, could do that. Just be themselves. The world would be such a wonderful place.
I sometimes think, isn't it the trade-off you get though by getting older? You're young, you're uncertain, you look gorgeous, you have fantastic health, but you're really neurotic and you don't know who you are in the world. And then you get older, you put on weight, you're slightly more grey hair, a bit saggier, but you're full of wisdom and you're really sure of yourself. And that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off.
I don't know, because I know so many young and saggy people who haven't got a bloody clue.
Well, yeah, now that's where life's been cruel. Yeah, that's where it's not fair.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, no, that's you've got to have compassion, Mimi.
Well, that's where it comes in. Absolutely. Oh, dear Suzanne, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, really. Honestly, I could talk to you forever.
I know, we've been here till midnight. Thank you so much for having me on your show. You're doing a wonderful thing here, Mimi. They are brilliant chats, and I hope it makes some people smile. And there's lots of wisdom in your guests. So well done you as well.
Oh, thank you. And there's so much wisdom within you, Suzanne. And I know that there's so much more that you know and can share with us. And anytime you would like to come on again, please do so. Don't hesitate.
Fantastic. I'll write more notes.
No notes. But before you go, I want to ask you, where can people find out? Do you have a website, more about your work, what you do, who you are?
Yes. If you want to find more out about what I'm doing and where I am, I have a website called Natural Solutions. Hang on a moment. Let me just move that. There we go. naturalsolutions@healthcare.com.
So what is it? www.
Oh, I think so. I should know this. This is my big chance. Blown it.
No, you haven't. Come on.
Naturalsolutions.healthcare.
Okay, all right. And that's
I'd say that's probably www.healthcare.
So it's www.naturalsolutions.healthcare.
That's it, rather than a UK or a com. We've got that.
I've never seen that before, actually.
Yeah, they're cheap.
Oh.
No, I don't mean that. No. It's just naturalsolutions.com and naturalsolutions.co.uk was taken. So we went with healthcare, and it's pretty much what we are. So
it's it's a good title, actually. It actually defines what you do. And before you go, one more thing. A little bit of wisdom on your part for the listeners out there, Suzanne, please, where something that has helped you in your life and continues to help you, to serve you, some advice for people out there that are struggling. A lot of people out there are struggling. We all have our moments. What would you say to them?
Oh, you've got to be compassionate to yourself and to others. Don't be so hard on ourselves. And it's that we're on a journey. We don't have to get there straight away. We don't have to have it all figured out. Trust we're gonna end up where we need to be, and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. But be compassionate to yourself and others while you're on it.
That's beautiful advice, actually.
Good.
It's not so easy to do.
No.
But we can aspire to that.
Yeah.
We certainly can. Oh, well, I wish you a beautiful evening. And again, thank you so much for joining me. It really, I've had such a good time and such a laugh, and I've learned so much, actually, also from you. So I'm very grateful to you.
You too, Mimi. You take care. Thank you. Bye.
All right, then. Take care. Bye. Bye. Suzanne Morgan, what an absolutely lovely lady. Thank you, as always, for joining me and my beautifully wonderful guests. You are so appreciated. Until next time, look after yourselves and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.